Welcome, Anders. Here in Sweden, it's fall is in full swing. We're moving quickly towards the holidays, and you have a new book out.
Yes, and I hope that it's going to be the Christmas present for everyone. So that's a light in the autumn darkness.
Absolutely. Okay, we have, if we look at the US, we have the US economy and the elections. We have inflation and job numbers. How is the US economy looking ahead of the election?
Well, when it comes to the economy, the US is in a very strong position. We got good labor market numbers, employment growth strong, unemployment remaining low, and wages fairly contained given the high productivity that the US are seeing. So I do think that this is supportive for demand. Real wages are coming back. People are fairly confident in the job market, so precautionary saving can remain low. So I think the US is heading into 2025 with a solid footing. But I think today everybody is waiting for the election result. The best outcome is obviously if we have a split House where the Senate is controlled by the Republicans and the House by the Democrats. That would maybe prevent Harris tax increases and maybe stop Trump from starting a trade war. But everybody is waiting for the election result. And clearly the opinion polls are so close that only a fool would call this election. So yeah, normally we get a bit of relief when uncertainty comes down after the election, but I think this time it will all depend on the election outcome.
And then we have ECB today going to most likely cut rates. How is Europe as we move towards the end of the year?
Well, Europe looks fairly different from the US. The economy is much weaker. We get maybe below 1% growth this year and maybe 1% or a little bit above 1% next year. So ECB are cutting. The manufacturing sector is very weak and we've seen inflation coming down. It is very likely that we will see a rate cut now from the ECB at every policy meeting. But it is from a different backdrop of much lower growth, softer demand. But also in Europe, there is a bit of recovery, but a softer one.
And then we have Sweden. We have a lot of the Q3 earnings reports coming now. How do you assess the outlook for Swedish companies?
Well, I do think the earnings reports mainly will be, I would say, positive in the US. This is how it has started. There is a little bit more uncertainty in Europe and expectations are much lower. Obviously, some of the Swedish companies will struggle given that Q3 in Germany has been very weak. But I do think that the Swedish stock market has a solid footing in terms of high margins and technological leadership and strong balance sheets. So I think eventually we will see the stock market stabilizing and coming back.
Yeah. A lot in the news these days about the energy transition and Sweden's role in that. How important is the shift for Sweden's economic growth?
Well, from an overall perspective, I think climate transition is going to be very supportive for the Swedish economy. We have an electricity system that is based on nuclear and hydro, so we don't need to shut down any coal plants. We have huge resources of iron ore, copper, zinc, nickel, and other natural resources. And the Swedish industrial export companies are already very far into the transition. So when the rest of Europe will start to pay for carbon oxide emissions, I think this will give quite a boost to Swedish economy.
And lastly, then we have emerging markets. If we have India has been quite strong. China, there's been a lot of turbulence and faces quite a few challenges. With geopolitical risks and the US election coming up, do you think emerging markets are positioned to gain ground?
Well, I mean, emerging market starts out with better footing in growth and fairly low valuation. So it's obviously an asset class that one should take seriously. For China, I do think we need to see some clarity on the stimuluses. The real estate crisis is very deep, and clearly the markets will be hesitant before the US election because obviously there is a potential for an intensified trade conflict. But I do think that the emerging market has strong support in underlying growth and fairly decent valuations.
Great. Thank you very much, and have a lovely weekend soon.
Thank you very much, Jessica.